When a woman learns how to navigate her emotions and reconnect with her true value, she no longer pleads for affection, she evokes it. And the most powerful part? She doesn't have to pursue it. Love finds its own way back. No, this isn't sorcery, it's psychology. Sister, have you ever felt that deep sting of being replaced like yesterday's news? Discarded without reason, without closure? But listen carefully, this isn't the final chapter. It's the opening page of a completely new edition of you. Because what you decide to do in this space of emptiness will shape your destiny. Will you shrink or rise? Most fall into the same trap. They chase. They type out messages as if their dignity were connected to a phone screen. They beg, justify, and shrink themselves, and with each frantic gesture, they lose their value. It's like dousing emotional flames with gasoline. Sound familiar? You're not alone, but now it's time to rewrite the script. Today, you'll come to understand why silence, detachment, and personal reinvention aren't just trendy advice. They're emotional and psychological weapons. And no, you don't need to become a monk or read 100 self-help books. You need courage, the courage to change your patterns. Because the woman who stops begging for love begins to command it, not through words, but by her presence. Stay until the very last sentence, because this message isn't meant for emotional beggars. It's for women who are ready to rise into a version of themselves so authentic, so powerful, that even the past turns around in awe. And let this sink in. This isn't about him. It's about you, about your return to self. Because the moment you no longer need him is the exact moment he starts to crave you. Lesson 1. The authority of emotional silence. It's that wordless quiet that shouts louder than 1,000 desperate texts. Have you noticed the more you talk, the less you are heard? Let me tell you something, sister. Silence isn't a void, it's a calculated act. When he left, maybe you did what many do. You reached out, you asked questions. You begged for one more chance, but that noise only validated his choice to walk away. Why? Because that noise reeks of desperation, and desperation is the most off-putting fragrance a woman can wear. But listen, when you embrace silence, you don't vanish. You leave a deeper imprint. Emotional silence isn't surrender. It's ceasing to feed a flame that only consumes your own energy. When someone is used to your continual availability, your messages, your check-ins, your absence becomes heavier than any words you could ever say. And suddenly he begins to question, why isn't she calling? Doesn't she care anymore? Is there someone else? It's like walking through a loud market every day and then suddenly, silence. You stop. You notice. That's how emotional distance works. It's not running away. It's creating such a sharp contrast that he can't help but feel the shift. The philosopher Epictetus said it clearly. First, understand what you mean to say, then speak. In this case, first understand what your silence conveys, then let him interpret. Because when you offer no explanation, his mind writes the story. And that, my sister, is no accident. It's a tactic. Do you know what happens when a woman who always replied within seconds suddenly vanishes? She creates a vacuum. And nature despises a vacuum. That man who once didn't think twice about ignoring your messages begins to feel your absence like a missing limb. You're no longer inflating his ego, no longer clapping for his mediocrity. Suddenly you become an unanswered question. Let me tell you about a real woman. She was blocked from every platform. What did she do? Nothing. No begging, no drama, no posts designed to attract sympathy. Just silence. She focused on herself, on her body, her career, her healing. 2 months later, he messaged her with a feeble line, "I dreamed about you." That was no accident. That was silence doing its job, because silence doesn't just speak, it creates. In that quiet, she rebuilt her worth and rediscovered the parts of herself she had abandoned. And that inner transformation radiates, even across thousands of kilometers. Silence isn't passive, it's pressure. It's an emotional time bomb, so delete the urge to message him today. No greetings, no memes, no veiled references, nothing. Make yourself emotionally out of reach, not to erase him, but to remind yourself you no longer waste energy on someone who didn't value it. And while you hold your silence, grow. Each silent moment should be worth 10 steps of evolution. Every time you text him, every plea, every explanation screams, even silently, "I can't breathe without you." That energy repels because all of us, without exception, crave what we can't easily grasp. Not what lies open on a tray. Silence is like a soul cleanse. It hurts at first, it's awkward, but over time it strengthens you. Your posture shifts, your focus sharpens. You begin to broadcast on a new wavelength, one that says, "I am whole within myself, So stop trying to win with words. Let your absence echo louder than any speech. Lesson 2. Reverse psychology without deception. When you pull back, something strange happens. He starts leaning in. Have you ever noticed that the moment you emotionally detach, he suddenly appears? That's where many stumble. They mistake detachment for coldness, when in truth, it's influence. The moment you stop feeding his ego, his mind begins to shift. You're no longer a routine, no longer a constant. You become a variable, and the male brain craves to resolve uncertainty. Habit builds expectation, and when you suddenly disrupt that habit, it creates discomfort. Even if he doesn't understand why, he feels it. This isn't about tricking him, it's not manipulation. It's about shifting your position in the emotional dynamic. You're not avoiding him out of bitterness, you're stepping back out of clarity, because anyone who takes your presence for granted deserves the weight of your absence. It's like removing sugar from someone who's been drinking sweet tea all their life. At first, they don't know what's missing, but they notice something is off, the taste has changed. And even if they don't say it out loud, they miss it. That quiet disruption, the space between what was and what now is, it awakens the oldest instinct in a man, the hunt. When something becomes elusive, when access is restricted, the human mind reacts, especially the male psyche. Evolution built them to pursue what slips away. Not because they're weak, but because they're wired that way, to chase, to conquer. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In this case, it means you don't stoop, you don't crawl, you don't try to outshout his indifference. You remain focused, composed, unbothered. You're not reacting. You're moving intentionally. And that quiet discipline, sister, that mental sharpness, destabilizes even the strongest of egos. Reverse psychology isn't just about silence. It's about reclaiming the power. When someone chases you, you hold the reins. You decide who enters, who stays, who is worthy of your time. But if you were once endlessly available and then nothing, the power dynamic flips. Now he's the one asking, where did she go? What changed? Did I lose her? That shift in energy. It's magnetic. Another real story. A girl used to post heartbreak poems, share melancholy quotes, and indirectly cry out in Instagram stories. Until one day she stopped, deleted it all, joined a gym, focused on her career, and emotionally disappeared. 2 weeks later, despite already being with another woman, he reached out. Are you okay? A harmless question, but behind it, unease, confusion, a gnawing uncertainty brought on by her silence. Because when you shift your energy, when you stop showing up for him, you create a crack in his reality. And humans will do anything to close a loop that doesn't make sense, so apply it. No watching his stories, no asking friends about him, no decoding his posts. Live your life, redesign your routine, turn every hour without him into an hour for yourself. Your distance isn't bitterness, it's repositioning, and that repositioning isn't just in your actions, it's in your essence. It's the quiet, resolute voice that says, I am no longer standing where you left me. You're redefining your values, reorganizing your priorities. You're no longer the woman who waits for a message. You're the woman walking forward with purpose. And that, my sister, is captivating. Stop striving to be remembered. Become unforgettable. Because when you evolve, your presence transforms. Your energy becomes rare, and rare things hold weight. You are not here to be a backup plan. You are the one who stopped asking to be loved, because now you're the one who's being chosen. Lesson 3. The power of emotional scarcity. What is rare becomes irresistible, because what we cannot possess is exactly what intrigues us the most. There's a law that never fails. Abundance dilutes value. It applies to wealth, to time, and to people. When you were constantly available, when you were always the first to reach out, when you kept checking in, he got used to it. And what's familiar often fades into the background. Think about it. Do you ever appreciate the air you breathe? Probably not, because it's always there. But the moment you struggle for breath, even for a few seconds, you suddenly understand its worth. The same logic applies to your emotional presence. When you're constantly present, you become invisible. But the moment you withdraw, everything shifts. That emotional scarcity doesn't just stir curiosity. It plants a seed of urgency in his mind. Questions begin forming. Where did she go? Is she over me? Did she fall for someone else? And that uncertainty, that flood of unknowns, is far more impactful than any heartfelt poem or sentimental message. Because now you're no longer a pattern. You're a mystery. It's like a plant that was always blooming, and one day, it's gone. Only then do they realize they were walking past something special every day. Or imagine the bread that's always on the dinner table. No one notices it until it's missing, and suddenly it becomes the one thing everyone wants. This isn't some emotional trick. It's human nature, it's economics, it's psychology. The law of scarcity says when something becomes limited, its value skyrockets, and your energy, your time, your love, they are no exception. Escobar once said, "We don't value what we have until it's gone." But the wise woman, the emotionally evolved woman, she doesn't act to be valued. She acts to protect her center. She doesn't scream for attention, yet her presence is felt, and her absence echoes louder than any words ever could. This idea goes far beyond love. It shapes every relationship, friends, family, work. Have you ever noticed that the people who are in highest demand are often the least available? The busiest ones, the most focused, the most selective? They're also the ones who are most respected. That's not an accident. It's a pattern. One woman used to be available around the clock, messaging first, checking in, solving his problems. Doing emotional labor he never even acknowledged. Until one day she stopped. No games, no cold messages, just a quiet exit. She started posting pictures of her progress, the gym, travel, career growth, not to impress him, but because she finally turned her attention inward. And guess what happened? He came back, confused, insecure, reaching for any excuse to make contact. But it was too late. She wasn't emotionally standing in that old place anymore. And that silence, that subtle, elegant disappearance, it shook him more than any angry outburst ever could. See the pattern? What's always there fades into the background, but what becomes scarce becomes unforgettable. When you were constantly present, he had the luxury to ignore you. But when you vanished, when your love became rare, his mind couldn't rest. You were no longer guaranteed access. You became a lost opportunity. So today, start limiting your emotional availability. Don't respond instantly. Don't stay accessible 24/7, not because you want to punish, but because you're finally prioritizing your own peace. And let's be clear, this isn't about playing games or staging emotional theater. It's about rebuilding your kingdom from the inside. Because your energy, your dreams, your peace, they belong to you now. When you truly begin to grow, emotional scarcity becomes your natural state. Not because you're cold, but because you're focused. When you're busy becoming the best version of yourself, there's no time to beg anyone for crumbs. Being emotionally scarce isn't cruelty, it's clarity, it's wisdom, it's emotional intelligence in action. Because while others beg for attention, you walk quietly, but deliberately, back to your power. And that walk, that calm, confident silence, it's not just attractive, it's impossible to ignore. So stop handing out your energy like it costs nothing. Become so valuable, so self-possessed, that even if he tries, he can't forget you. Lesson 4. The illusion of contact and the magnetism of disappearance. What he doesn't know about you drives him wild. After a breakup, many women fall into the same emotional snare. They keep in touch. Maybe they don't say much, just a few harmless messages, a casual story post, a subtle like, a soft reminder that they're still around, still available, still watching. They believe that if they stay visible, if they stay near, he'll eventually recognize their worth. But here lies the fatal mistake. Staying in contact doesn't trigger regret, it breeds comfort. Because as long as he knows you're one message away, he feels no urgency, no fear of loss, no shift in value. What is always within reach is never fully cherished. Now let's flip that. Do you know what holds real power? Complete disappearance. No messages, no reactions, no accidental views of his stories, no hints, just stillness, just distance, just the complete withdrawal of your energy. When you remove yourself without announcement or dramatics, when you go silent without explanation, his imagination takes over. And that, sister, is where the magic begins. Because when the male mind lacks information, it starts building narratives. Has she moved on? Is she seeing someone new? Why isn't she watching my stories anymore? That's not indifference on his part. That's a growing obsession wearing the mask of curiosity. It's attention disguised as confusion, desire hidden behind silence. It's like your favorite TV show suddenly going off air mid-season. What do viewers do? They scramble, they check for spoilers, they search fan forums, they obsess over theories. The same psychological wiring is at play. When you vanish, you become the unfinished story, the unsolved mystery, and human nature cannot tolerate an open loop. When you disappear with dignity, you create a void no text could ever match, a void his mind rushes to fill. And what he invents in your absence will always be more intense than any reality you could have given him. Because now, he's not responding to what you say, he's reacting to what he imagines. And that imagined version of you, it's untouchable, unpredictable, unreachable. Epictetus said it perfectly. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. The same applies here. Don't explain your silence. Don't announce your withdrawal. Don't seek permission to detach. Just do it. Live it. Be it. You're not asking for space. You're owning it. Let me tell you another real story. A man blocked his ex from every platform. Instagram, WhatsApp, everything. Her response? Silence. No dramatic posts, no text messages from new accounts, no passive-aggressive memes. She didn't post to get his attention. She disappeared to focus on herself. Months later, he messaged her from a fake profile. How are you? Coincidence? Not even close. That was pure psychological effect because when access is denied, obsession begins to grow. What we can't touch becomes what we want most. This works because it hits a raw nerve, the primal fear of irreversible loss. As long as you're reachable, he holds the power. He thinks, I can get her back whenever I want. But when you vanish without warning, with no explanations, no bitterness, just complete absence, he panics. That panic is real. It creates more pull than love ever could. So, no likes. No, I was just checking in, no response to his story, no reaction to his new girlfriend's posts, nothing. And while you maintain that silence, you're not waiting. You're building, you're evolving. Because when you do return, if you return, you must return as a woman so transformed he won't even know how to speak to you. That silence you're holding, it's not passive. It's charged. It's strategic. It's potent. You're not counting the days until he calls. You're counting the steps you've taken toward your own healing, your own goals, your own life. You're no longer shaped by his presence or absence. You're defined by your own momentum. The one who chases creates pressure. The one who vanishes creates curiosity. And curiosity is the spark of desire. Because when you're constantly speaking, he has no time to wonder. But when you choose to be silent, he begins to scream, silently, internally. And never forget, magnetic silence isn't a short-term trick. It's not a gimmick to get him back. It's a mindset, a lifestyle. It's the inner knowing that you no longer depend on his attention to feel whole. Because the woman who rebuilds herself in silence becomes unforgettable. The nights you cried alone, they were seeds. The mornings you woke up with a pit in your stomach, they were lessons. The days you doubted your worth, they were preparation. Every moment of pain is shaping something powerful. Don't reject it. Don't rush it. Live it. Because every tear you shed was watering the roots of a stronger you. Every hour of silence was a bold act of self-respect. Every day without contact was a quiet statement. I will not abandon myself for anyone. And here's the most powerful part. The day will come when you're not pretending to be okay. You are. When you're not faking strength, you've become it. When you no longer obsess about getting him back because you've reclaimed yourself. That's the moment of true rebirth. Not a show for him, not a facade for social media. A quiet, fierce revolution within your soul. Because he won't return because you pleaded. He'll return when he realizes the woman he once knew is gone. And in her place now stands someone complete, rooted, radiant, free. And if he does come back, you decide. Because the woman who used to beg for love no longer exists. Lesson 5. Rebuilding without permission. The final shift you've cried. You've stayed silent. You've begun to grow. But there's one trap left. And it's the most subtle of all. Thinking that one day he'll come back and finally see your worth. Let's make something clear. Your rebirth isn't a strategy to get him back. It's a return to yourself. It's a decision to never again make someone else the center of your world. Because if your healing is still tied to the hope of his return, you haven't healed. You've just paused the pain. There comes a moment, and you'll feel it, when you're no longer waiting. You're no longer checking his profile. You're no longer hoping he finally gets it. That moment is freedom. That moment is truth. Let me tell you the story of a woman who lost everything at once, her relationship and her job. She crumbled. She sat in the wreckage of her life with no map, no clarity, just grief. But she didn't stay there. She chose to build. She got back in shape. She enrolled in a course. She started a business. And a year later, yes, he came back. But this time, she didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She didn't fold. She thanked him. Because without that heartbreak, without being left behind, she never would have awakened to the power she had buried inside her. He returned, looking for the girl he left. But she was gone. In her place stood a woman who no longer needed anyone's permission to be radiant, focused, strong, unreachable. That's not an isolated story, that's a blueprint. It's been lived by thousands of women before you. And if you understand this one truth, it can become your story too. Rejection is not the end, it's the redirection. The pain of heartbreak, it can either break you or it can build you. If you use it as fuel, not as an excuse. That ache in your chest, it can either be a prison or a passport. You decide. And here's the most liberating part. With time, you stop caring if he comes back at all, because you realize you were never truly chasing him. You were chasing the version of yourself that disappeared when he left. And now, piece by piece, you're getting her back. So today, not tomorrow, not next week, make a list. What part of yourself do you want to rebuild? Is it your health, your finances, your confidence, your inner peace? And start. Not for him, for you. Because when you become unreachable, not by playing games, but because you've elevated, people feel it. And if they return, they don't come back because they think they can manipulate you. They come back with awe, with curiosity, with a sense of loss they can't quite name. Personal rebirth is the most demanding path you'll ever walk. But it's also the most rewarding. Because while others wait for a message, you're working on a mission. While others scroll through old photos, you're sketching a new vision. And that, sister, is the difference between a woman who begs and a woman who chooses. Don't beg for another chance. Become the kind of woman who has the power to give or withhold one. And remember, if he ever does come back, it won't be to the same woman. Because you won't be there anymore. At least not the version of you who once settled for crumbs. You'll be centered, whole, unshakable. And from that place, you decide if he fits into your new life, not the other way around. So ask yourself, at what point in this journey did something inside you shift? Which line pierced through the fog and whispered, "This is exactly what I needed"? Because your story has power, and sharing it may help another woman who's standing where you once stood. Final reflection, the woman you were and the one you're becoming. So here you are, at the edge of a version of yourself that no longer fits. You've walked through the fire of silence, of absence, of longing. You've stared at your phone with trembling hands and chose not to send that message. You've sat in stillness while your old self begged to chase, to fix, to explain, but you didn't. And that alone, sister, makes you powerful. Because every time you choose not to betray your own dignity, you take a step toward the woman you were always meant to be. The one who doesn't negotiate her worth, the one who doesn't offer her soul for temporary validation, the one who doesn't wait to be chosen, because she already is the choice. This isn't about pride. It's about peace. The kind of peace that comes when your joy no longer depends on someone else's attention. The kind of strength that isn't loud, it's grounded, that radiates from within, that whispers, "I have me, and that's enough." You see, the most dangerous woman in the world is not the one who lashes out, not the one who begs or screams. It's the one who goes quiet, who pulls back with grace, who chooses herself so completely that her absence roars louder than her presence ever did. Because silence is not a void, it is a mirror. And when you hold that mirror up to a man who once took you for granted, he is forced to see himself and what he lost. But more importantly, you are finally forced to see yourself. Not the broken version, not the one defined by his opinion, but the woman who survived, who healed, who rose. And when you see her clearly, you never go back. So take every tear, every unanswered message, every aching night, and thank them. Not because they were fair, but because they were necessary. They pushed you inward. They stripped away illusion. They burned down the parts of you that clung to less. And what rises from those ashes is not just strength, it's sovereignty. You are no longer playing the old game. You are building a new world. One where you are the center, not a satellite. One where your worth is not a question, but a constant. One where you don't wait for a text to feel seen, because you already see yourself. So if he comes back, and maybe he will, don't rush to open the door. Look through it. Ask yourself, does this version of me still need that version of him? And if the answer is no, close it with love, not bitterness. Because healing is not about proving you've moved on. It's about knowing you're not the same woman who needed him to stay. And if he doesn't come back, even better, because you didn't do this for him. You did it for the woman inside you who whispered, "I deserve more." And finally, you listened. Epilogue. Your power was never lost, only forgotten. There will come a quiet morning, maybe unexpected, maybe during the most mundane moment, brushing your hair, tying your shoes, sipping your coffee, when it will hit you, I made it through. And not just through the pain, through the self-abandonment. That's the real victory. Because this journey was never truly about getting over him. It was about coming home to you. The woman buried under apologies she never owed. The woman who twisted herself to fit into spaces too small for her truth. The woman who thought being loved meant being less. Not anymore. You've reclaimed your time, your energy, your reflection in the mirror. And with that reclamation comes a kind of confidence that doesn't shout. It settles, quiet, rooted, certain. You're not auditioning for love. You're not campaigning for validation. You are no longer waiting for someone to give you permission to shine, because you remembered. You were the source all along, and maybe one day you'll meet someone new. Or maybe not, but that won't define your worth, because your love story doesn't start with them. It starts with you, with your boundaries, your laughter, your depth, your decisions, with the way you walk into a room and no longer need it to confirm your value. And let's be honest, he might return, with nostalgia in his voice, with old songs and apologies. But he won't be returning to what he left because she's gone. In her place is a woman who isn't moved by memory. She's moved by momentum. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not the silence, not the strategy, not the rebirth, but the fact that in a world that told you to shrink, to settle, to wait, you expanded. You chose yourself. And that choice will echo farther than any cry for closure ever could. So here's your final reminder. You don't need to be saved. You just needed to stop saving everyone but yourself. Now go live, not as someone waiting to be loved, but as someone who already is, by the only person who truly matters, you.